Have you ever failed so publicly that everyone around you knew about it? Have you ever felt like your mistake was so visible, so devastating, that there was no way to recover? Perhaps you're living in that moment right now, where shame feels like a heavy blanket you can't shake off. Today, I want to tell you about someone who failed in the most public, most devastating way possible. Yet this same person became one of the most important cornerstones of the Christian faith. His story isn't just ancient history. It's a mirror that reflects God's incredible power to transform our deepest failures into our greatest testimonies. Let me take you back to a night filled with fear and confusion. The man I'm talking about is Peter, the disciple who walked closest to Jesus. Just hours before his failure, Peter had declared with absolute confidence, "Even if all fall away on account of you, I never will." Matthew 26:33. He even said, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." Matthew 26:35. These weren't empty words from a casual follower. Peter genuinely believed he would stand firm. He had seen Jesus walk on water. He had witnessed the transfiguration. He had confessed that Jesus was the Christ, the Son of the living God. Peter's faith seemed unshakable. But then came that terrible night in the courtyard. Jesus had been arrested and taken away. Peter followed at a distance, trying to see what would happen to his master. As he sat by the fire warming himself, a servant girl looked at him and said, "You also were with Jesus of Galilee." Matthew 26:69. And Peter denied it. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Not once, but 3 times. Each denial became stronger, more desperate. The 3rd time, he even began to call down curses on himself and swore, "I don't know the man." Matthew 26:74. Then immediately a rooster crowed. And at that very moment, Jesus turned and looked straight at Peter. Can you imagine that moment? The eyes of the one who had called him, taught him, loved him, now looking at him in his moment of complete betrayal. Luke 22:61 tells us, "The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Peter went outside and wept bitterly." This wasn't quiet tears. This was the kind of weeping that comes from the depths of your soul when you realize you've become the very thing you promised you'd never be. Everyone knew what Peter had done. The other disciples knew. The servants in the courtyard knew. And worst of all, Jesus knew. But here's where the story takes a turn that only God could write. Peter's failure wasn't the end of his story. It was actually the beginning of his transformation. You see, before this moment, Peter relied on his own strength, his own confidence, his own promises. After this moment, Peter would learn to rely completely on God's grace and power. After Jesus rose from the dead, he sought Peter out. On the shore of the Sea of Galilee, Jesus prepared breakfast for his disciples. And there, in front of the others, Jesus asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" John 21:15-17. 3 questions for 3 denials. Not to shame Peter, but to restore him. Each time Peter answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus gave him a commission. Feed my lambs. Take care of my sheep. Feed my sheep. Jesus was saying, Peter, your failure doesn't disqualify you. I'm entrusting you with my most precious possession, my people. And what happened next is absolutely remarkable. On the day of Pentecost, just weeks after his public denial, Peter stood up in front of thousands of people and preached the gospel with such power that 3,000 people were saved in a single day. Acts 2:41. The man who couldn't confess Christ in front of a servant girl now boldly proclaimed Jesus as Lord and Messiah before massive crowds. Peter became the rock that Jesus had always said he would be. He performed miracles, led the early church, and eventually wrote 2 books of the New Testament that continue to encourage millions of believers today. Tradition tells us that Peter was eventually martyred for his faith, and that he requested to be crucified upside down because he didn't feel worthy to die in the same manner as his Lord. What transformed Peter from a public failure into a cornerstone of faith? It wasn't his own determination or willpower. It was his encounter with God's grace. Peter learned that God doesn't use perfect people. He uses surrendered people. He doesn't need our strength. He needs our willingness to let him be strong in our weakness. The Apostle Paul, who himself had a dramatic transformation, later wrote, "But he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me.'" 2 Corinthians 12:9. Perhaps you're carrying the weight of a public failure right now. Maybe you made a mistake at work that everyone knows about. Maybe you failed in a relationship and the whole community saw it fall apart. Maybe you made a promise to God that you broke, and you feel like you can never be used by Him again. Let Peter's story speak to your heart today. Your failure is not your final chapter. God specializes in taking broken people and making them into powerful witnesses. In fact, your failure might be the very thing that prepares you for your greatest calling. Here's what you need to do. First, bring your failure to Jesus honestly. Don't minimize it. Don't make excuses. Peter wept bitterly because he saw his sin clearly. True restoration begins with honest acknowledgement. Second, receive God's forgiveness. Jesus didn't hold Peter's denial against him. He restored him fully and completely. Romans 8:1 promises, "Therefore, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. If you've confessed your sin, you are forgiven. Period." Third, let God redefine you. You are not defined by your worst moment. You are defined by whose you are. Peter wasn't Peter the denier. He became Peter the apostle, Peter the rock, Peter the shepherd of God's flock. Let God give you a new identity based on His grace, not your performance. Fourth, use your failure as a testimony. Peter's restoration story has encouraged countless believers for 2,000 years. Your story of failure and restoration can bring hope to someone who feels hopeless right now. 2 Corinthians 1:4 tells us that God comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. Finally, step back into your calling. When Jesus restored Peter, He immediately gave him work to do. Feed my sheep. God has a purpose for your life, and your failure hasn't canceled that purpose. It may have refined it, deepened it, or redirected it, but God still has plans for you. Remember, the same Jesus who looked at Peter in his moment of failure is looking at you today with eyes full of love and purpose. He's not waiting to condemn you. He's waiting to restore you. He's not keeping a record of your wrongs. He's preparing you for your next assignment. Peter's public failure became the foundation for his powerful ministry, because it taught him that everything depends on God's grace, not human strength. Your failure can do the same for you if you'll let God use it. So today, wherever you are, whatever you've done, know this: you are not disqualified. You are not beyond hope. You are not too far gone. The God who transformed Peter from a denier into a cornerstone is the same God who wants to transform your story. Let this be the day you stop running from your failure and start running toward God's grace. Let this be the day you stop believing the lie that you're finished and start believing the truth that God is just getting started with you. May the Lord, who restored Peter, restore you completely. May He turn your greatest shame into your most powerful testimony. And may He use you mightily for His kingdom, not despite your failure, but through the grace you've discovered in it. Please like and subscribe. See you in the next video.